You're listening to the Be Better Off Show by Kelly+Partners.
Well, good morning and welcome to the Be Better Off Show, where we find leading Australian and New Zealanders to teach us about how to be healthier, wealthier and wiser. And this morning, we've got the CEO of Kathmandu, Reuben Casey, I think a brand that everyone's familiar with us. Welcome, Rueben.
Hi, Brett. How you doing? And hi, everybody.
Mate, I'm doing really well in these difficult times, but we'll try not to mention them again. We'll focus on other things.
Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
They seem to be getting not much better. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's right out there. I will come to that at the end. I'll try and avoid it for as long as possible. Rueben, tell us, where did you grow up? Kids, a number of kids in your family, and then, where did you go to school and how did you progress in your career? Did you finish school, go to university, or what's been your path?
Sure. So I grew up in a town called Gisborne on the east coast of New Zealand, the North Island of New Zealand. Family of five, so lots of fun shenanigans to be had there. And when I was about 13 or 14, we moved to Christchurch, which is in the South Island in New Zealand, and went to high school here in Christchurch and in university. Did a double degree in majoring in commerce and a BCom and a BA, so commerce, accounting for commerce, and then music for my BA. And then started off at KPMG, did audit for a few years, and then worked at a Meridian Energy, which is a power company, and then did the OE thing, headed off to the UK and spent 6 years in the UK working for TaylorMade Adidas Golf. So I was finance director for the EMEA, so we looked after Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Oceania actually as well. So that was a great fun. Had some tough work trips to places like Cape Town in South Africa, which involved playing golf and of course doing some tough business work, and then came back to Christchurch and joined Kathmandu about 11 years ago as group financial controller, and then since then have been the CFO and then the CFO, COO, and then after we acquired Rip Curl 18 months ago, almost 2 years ago, was fortunate enough to be appointed the CEO of the Kathmandu brand. So I look after Kathmandu and Oboz, which is our footwear brand based out of the US.
Fantastic. So, and not an atypical journey, I guess, from the finance role to the CEO role, but Kathmandu being a very different brand, I guess, from those other companies that you worked in. What are the similarities, I guess, and differences that you've picked up as you've gone along that have helped you in the role that you're in now? And how would you say Kathmandu, I guess, is different to say TaylorMade or these types of brands?
Yeah, I think if I go back to Meridian, I was retail finance manager, so it's still a very consumer-facing operation, but obviously selling power is not quite as exciting as selling golf clubs or selling hiking gear or jackets, etc. And I think, but having that consumer-facing understanding has been really important all the way through. And also Meridian was pretty strong on brand. And then when I got to TaylorMade, obviously brand was king, and also very technical products. There's a lot goes into golf clubs and golf balls and golf equipment. So that was great to get my head around how people thought about those, kind of developing those products and how we market those products. And when I was at TaylorMade, it was kind of pre-online shopping days. Hard to imagine what that was like back then, but pre-online, totally wholesale, so no direct consumer. So you would go out with your new season range and you get to show buyers what they were buying. So you got to kind of got a read on the market response to the products that we were introducing for the season, which is pretty helpful. And then when I got to Kathmandu, of course, it's completely vertical retail. So from production through to selling in our own stores, and we had mail order when I started, but not online. But certainly you miss that kind of testing out the market, because basically we design products, we put it in our stores to sell, and then we hope that people respond to it. So it's quite a different kind of approach, but certainly that consumer understanding and the product creation process and the importance of brand is similar from where I'd come from to Kathmandu. So yeah, it was a lot of good shared experience that I could bring with me.
So when you think about, I guess, your progression, is there anything that really shocked you about stepping up now from the sort of CFO style role to the CEO role, and what did you think the biggest differences were?
I guess the biggest difference is the buck really stops with you. So there's no one else left to ask. If things go bad, then it's on you. It's not on anybody else. So I think that's probably the biggest change. But that's more of a just a mindset change. And I've been the COO as well, so I've been heavily involved in the business. So I kind of understood the business really well when I got my chance to lead. And then when I took over in November 19 and went straight from there into the bushfires in Australia, and then I thought, oh, that was okay. We're over that now, and then we're straight into COVID. So it was quite a turbulent time to take over, and that really helped me. In some ways, or many ways, helped me just get really stuck in and lead from the front and establish myself as the CEO of the brand and lead the team. So bit of a baptism of fire, but you find out lots about yourself and find out what works and what doesn't work for your own personal style, and that was some great learnings through there, and it really kind of chance to galvanize the team and bring the team together, because we're all going through a tough time and you've got to work together to get through it as best you can, and really lean on each other and support each other. So that was wonderful to be able to, terrible to go through, but wonderful to see how the team kind of pulled together and really stuck by each other.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I think in personal relationships and in businesses that are ultimately based on personal relationships to such a great degree, more than I think people realize, stress events can really bring out the best in people in a sort of perverse way.
They can, yeah.
Most people don't know what they're really capable of.
Yeah, and as a leader, you've got to be able to remain kind of calm and in control to provide some sort of confidence, some sort of stability for the team, because not everyone deals with that in the same way. Some people need to, vent and explode and let it out. Other people will just go kind of retreat back, and other people are just kind of
not sure.
Yeah, so I think having that kind of calmness is really helpful to help the team through. So
yeah, I was with somebody yesterday, and he said when he was in a young sort of senior position, he went running down a hallway, and the big boss grabbed him and said, "Mate, don't run. You look hassled. You're the guy who's not meant to look hassled.
Yeah,
just walk with purpose." and
yeah.
He said he never forgot that. He sort of was like, "Oh yeah, I'm now the guy who people are looking at." I remember when we first had our first child, I spat out a window of a car, and 2 minutes later, I had a 2-year-old in the back trying to emulate it. It was a real wake up call that people really look at you, and they are looking for clues and cues as to what happens next. So tell us more about Kathmandu, like the ethic of the brand, the sort of soul of the brand. And I'm somebody that believes that the brands have souls. It's a bit of a strange mindset. But having come out of TaylorMade, the golf scene with TaylorMade and Titleist and the Nike Golf, these things are, like people, they couldn't be more different, notwithstanding they're similar. What makes Kathmandu?
Yeah, it was interesting transitioning from TaylorMade to Kathmandu, whereas both kind of active outdoor pursuits, but very different cultural mindset. I think TaylorMade was all about playing better golf, which is fine, but that's a certain niche of society. And
very niche.
Kathmandu is trying to be a brand for everyone. Our purpose is to improve the well-being of the world through the outdoors, and we believe that being outside and being outdoors is really beneficial for us and helps our well-being, both mental, physical, spiritual, if you like, and so having that kind of ethos really helps guide the organization. And we kind of reset those values and visions just recently, actually, because we had quite a sterile or corporate, you might say, approach to that in the past, and really didn't speak to who we really were as a brand and what was special about Kathmandu, and why we want people to love working at Kathmandu, and we want customers who experience our stores have a really positive experience, and the values that we had and the vision that we had and the purpose we had didn't really speak to that. So we've kind of reset that, but having that kind of kaupapa or purpose of improving the well-being of the world guides everything we do. So when we touch customers, we touch our team, we touch our people who make our product and our suppliers, we touch the physical environment that we operate in. So as a B Corp, we're kind of thinking about the ecosystem that we operate in and all those touch points, and how do we benefit those everywhere we touch. So how do we improve customers' day by providing a wonderful experience in store? How do we make sure our teams love coming to work and love working for us? How do we make sure that our people who make our product and our suppliers have the appropriate level or improving working conditions? And how do we make sure our suppliers, we're a good business partner to work with as a customer? And how do we minimize and reduce our environmental impact over time? So we kind of have that kind of guiding light or guiding North Star to really guide us in how we operate the business. And really, people are, one thing that struck me when I joined Kathmandu was how passionate people are about sustainability. I mean, I hadn't really thought about it much before joining, but if you bring a disposable coffee cup into the office, it's pretty frowned upon. And we have waste watchers or waste busters, like instead of Ghostbusters, waste busters who routinely go through the rubbish and say, hey, we're not putting the stuff in the right bins for recycling and things. And so people are really deeply passionate about it, and our store teams push us along all the way in terms of, can we do more on this, can we do more on that? So it's a huge thread that runs through the whole organization.
It's great. And where you talk about sort of fashion, there's a great sort of, I think, Netflix special, The Price of Fashion. I think people are more aware now of supply chain. Where does this thing come from, whether it's their food or a jacket or a shirt or whatnot. I think the connectivity of the world through the internet has made that, and will exponentially increase that transparency. How do you deal with supply chain? Where your product's manufactured, what are the working conditions, what are the environmental conditions? How deep are you guys into that piece?
We're as deep as we can be within limits of, especially at the moment with travel and not being completely on the ground the whole time. So we have we get products made in Indonesia, Vietnam, and China, probably our biggest 3 locations. We partner with an organization called Elevate, who help us do our kind of supplier auditing program. And we got accredited with the Fair Labor Association a couple of years ago, 4 years ago now, which is a not-for-profit out of the US. I mean, there's kind of Fair Wear out of Europe, and there's the Fair Labor Association out of the US. And they provide a framework for how we should approach that kind of verification of standards. They audit our auditing process to make sure we are doing the right things. And we've tried to be very careful not to be too much of a kind of a big stick approach to auditing, because that just kind of generates the environment for people to try and hide stuff. It's very challenging. People rely on, it's a competitive market. People rely on passing audits to continue to do the business. So then they may cut corners or try and hide stuff. So you've got to have a real partnership approach to it. We also have, we stipulate we must display our terms of trade, supplier code of conduct in local languages in all of our factories which are manufacturing, so workers can see what we expect to be happening in that location. We have a WeChat app where people can kind of whistle blow if something's not happening. They can use WeChat to notify us directly that there's an issue. That's via Elevate, and that's been really useful. We had one example where a supplier had moved production from one factory to another factory, and we don't audit the supplier, we audit the factory itself. So we'll go and physically look at the fire exits, how are chemicals stored, what are the conditions, are people getting overworked, and looking for young workers or other things that are wrong, and so they've moved this production from one factory to another factory which wasn't authorized by us, and there's a number of other brands involved, but we kind of got notified of that, and so we could rectify that situation pretty quickly. So there's always things happening in the supply chain which is hard to, visibility is really tough, and modern slavery is a huge issue in terms of apparel in particular. And I think they reckon there's something like 35 million people in some form of modern slavery. Often it's people who have paid to get a job, and then they arrive and then they get told that they owe more money and there's more fees to pay, and then they're in debt and they have to keep working, and it's kind of a never-ending thing, so it becomes forced labor. So we're really passionate about trying to not stamp it out, but making sure it doesn't happen in our facilities.
Not participate in it. Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think it's just going to become exponentially more important, because I think it's really what is driving the B Corp movement, is that people are more conscious of how they're engaging with brands and how organizations and where they spend their money. And hopefully that's a good thing over time.
Yeah, I think Western societies over time have benefited from finding cheaper production in Asia, which has created a whole infrastructure and lots of jobs and livelihoods for those people. But the true cost is really too cheap. Like, when you see t-shirts for $5 or what have you, it's the true cost of that t-shirt is not $5. Like, when you think about the wider impact of what's happened to make that t-shirt, the impact on the environment, the labor cost, etc. It's so we've almost become accustomed to this cheap products, and somehow which drives more consumption, more throwaway consumption. I've just been watching a little thing on ABC about clothes donated to charity, which end up in Africa, which half of which, or not a huge amount of which, are no use to anybody, and they just end up in landfill. So because it doesn't cost much, people are quite happy to throw things away or donate things to charity, and then you end up with this kind of propagation of more and more resources being used. And we live in a world of finite resources, not infinite resources. So it's a kind of a structural problem with society and consumption, really, which is not something we can solve on our own. And that's why I think that, things like B Corp are really helpful, because it's working together and trying to collaborate with each other on solving some of these issues.
Yeah, it's I think going to be, I did 2 podcast interviews recently, and both one was a cotton supplier that's worked out how to mark the cotton in a way that you can scan it so that you can follow this cotton all the way through the supply chain. I think is really interesting, so that you know what sort of materials you're buying and where they came from. And then the second one was is a disposable diaper company that's really focused on the circular economy. And then I was watching recently an interview of the co-founder of Tesla, who's now gone off and has built a what he's called an urban mining company, where they've developed the technology to reuse batteries from cars and other batteries, and a lot of the materials that are in products that are in urban environments. And so they're collecting them and regenerating them. So that whole notion of circular economy, will Kathmandu get to a point, do you think, or are you already, where somebody can buy a shirt and bring the shirt back and send it back through a circular process? Or is that an aspiration? Or I see more of that in the future. Is that something you guys are thinking about?
Absolutely. It's as part of our UN Sustainable Development Goals. We are circular economy is something we're really exploring hard. Patagonia and REI in the US are 2 big outdoor operations in the US. They're both selling used gear. There hasn't been quite smooth sailing for those guys, because it's I think you get the quality of some of the stuff that comes back is challenging, I think, in some situations, but certainly something we are exploring in terms of how do we think about a more sustainable business model, more circular business model. People buy things, they might use it 3 times and then they don't need it anymore. Well, can we offer rentals? Can we offer ways to still have the use of the gear, but not necessarily need to own it for all time? So and the other thing we're trying to do is we introduced a biodegradable polar fleece earlier this year. So trying to find ways where the quality is long lasting, but if people choose to dispose of it, it's going to
throw it in landfill, that it'll break down
and return to usable material that doesn't harm the earth, or actually regenerates in that way. So we're trying to find different ways through different angles to try and be more circular in that respect.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And for all our listeners, whatever business you're in, we've got about 9,500 clients, Ruben, in all sorts of businesses. But I just call out this as, I think this is sort of a silent but growing situation that I think virtually every business is going to have to think about. I think they recently in Europe have banned a lot of types of plastics, and a lot of people were surprised that happened. But I was not that surprised, because I think that as a community, people are just going to be a lot more proactive about ending some of the behaviours that really just don't have a long-term future in them anyway. So,
I think people adapt. People adapt. I mean, there's a bit of an outcry when we ban plastic bags from shopping from supermarkets, and other stores, but people just get used to it. Once you get into the habit of having your bag with you when you go shopping, then it's okay. It's not a big deal. So.
Yeah, Pete, we're I think that, now I'll come to that dreaded subject of COVID. But I think, I try to focus on can there be any good outcomes from this situation? Well, one of those is the ability of people to adapt to strange and different circumstances. How has COVID impacted your business, and what have been your primary responses and the things that you think have worked the best from a business and team point of view to manage through?
Yeah, it's been quite a severe impact. So obviously when your stores are completely shut, as they were, think back to April last year, all stores completely shut in New Zealand and Australia. We couldn't operate online in New Zealand initially. Then they said, you can sell essential items. We could still operate online in Australia. So basically we've gone from 160 stores down to online only within the space of a week. And that was pretty challenging from a cash flow point of view. Thankfully, the government stepped up and helped with some support, so we were able to keep paying our team. We obviously reduced wages, but everyone in the team had to take reduction in pay, and so we all kind of tried to lead from the front and from that respect, and we're all in it together. And then it really was about just trying to manage our way through, and particularly paying attention to mental health and well-being of our team. So we use Facebook for Workplace, which is, I think it's called Workplace, but it's by Facebook, but it's a kind of an online thing like Facebook. But so we had a lot of our teams did a lot of kind of online learning courses and e-learning. We had regular catch-ups over virtual catch-ups and checking in with each other and making sure that people were kind of supported that way. And then as we've kind of came out of that period, obviously there was a bit of a bounce back of spending, but then Melbourne went into lockdown from August through till the end of October pretty much last year, and New Zealand was kind of in and out of a few little places. So it's been quite a stop-start environment for people, which I think is just starting to wear people down, and there's kind of a lockdown fatigue. Like Melbourne's on number 6, I think now. And I think this time's been really hard for them. They've really struggled. So just focusing on resilience and keeping people upbeat and keeping people positive has been a big focus for us and a big challenge. And we've got really good established safety procedures in our stores. So we made sure we've had no one's caught COVID in our team at any of our facilities. So we're really pleased with how we've looked after people's health and well-being that way. And really just trying to make sure we set the foundations for the future. So, it won't be like this forever. And how long it takes not to be like this is the unknown question, but we've got a plan for the future and got to still build the foundations. And
yeah, I agree. Totally.
Keep pushing forward. And so people,
you got to look out. Otherwise it just doesn't work. How has it helped you build your online offering out? Has it meant that that's become a focus for the team and you've been able to put more resource on building that channel?
We already had quite a strong online proportion of sales. So I think we're at about 13% in Australia, but that leaped up to kind of 18, 19%. In New Zealand, we're about 10, which went up a little bit, but not as much because we weren't locked down for as long. So it's always been a focus for us in the last few years anyway. And we've actually been doing a big project this last 12 months to reset our online platform. We invested in automation in our Australian warehouse about 3 years ago, and that helped us deal with the capacity spike that we had. So we were able to get through all the capacity that we had, which is great. the infrastructure within the Australia and New Zealand was not as able to deal with it. So the postal networks got overloaded. Australian Post, New Zealand Post got overloaded. So that was more of a challenge for us, which is something we had to try and use other suppliers and figure out ways to do that. And we had to upscale our support call center in quite a big way to deal with the increased volume of inquiries. But really, we were really pleased with how we came through that. Pleased that we'd put the investment in a couple of years ago to allow for long-term growth. But obviously, we got all that growth in about 2 weeks. So yeah, it's different.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because I think if we think lockdowns can happen again with businesses like yours, sort of ensuring that every one of your customers is digitally connected, it feels like an opportunity, so that you can get in and better communicate with your customers through that channel if things get
that's
hairy
right.
again.
Yeah. We had we had to be quite agile in terms of where you put your focus in terms of your advertising spend, or how are you kind of promoting yourself. And we've had a lot of customers, particularly the kind of so we say more mature customers, who you might live in Bendigo and you might have always shopped at your store, and then you still want to buy something and you go online, and it's a new experience for you. So we had quite a few of those kind of customers through last year, which has been taught us a few things about how easy some of our processes were to sign up or whatever online. It wasn't.
Yeah.
we might think it was easy, but they didn't find it easy. So yeah, I think that it teaches you a lot about the customer experience when you go through those periods.
Yeah, I've been reflecting a lot on the retail clients we have, and I thought that if they ever get to open their shops again, they should have people standing out the front. Anyone that walks in, they should sign them up digitally and make sure their process is easy with Absolutely. An iPad. Because the great brands that I use, they are incredible on their digital. And so when the lockdowns come, you're getting a personal message: hey, we haven't seen you because the store's closed, or anything you need. I thought that was absolutely amazing. But not always easy to sign up.
On that digital point, there's been a big push, obviously, with the change in how people can use third-party data for tracking you around the internet, etc. So yeah, it's been a hugely important process for all retailers now, is to get that direct connection.
Yeah. So that's exactly right. I see. So next to circular economy, I see digital privacy as being like the next big game changer. Every app that you open these days on your new iPhone or whatever says, do you want to share with these guys? The answer is generally no. They're really, Apple, I think, are really sort of removing old ways of tracking people, and I think they're going to force businesses to have a more one-to-one relationship. I think ultimately that ends up a good situation for a brand like yours that people want to have a relationship with anyway.
Yeah.
So it's very exciting. Really great to meet you, Reuben. Thank you so much. Guys, Kathmandu, it's an amazing brand. I think many of our clients and friends who listen to this podcast will know that. Now we've put a face to the brand for you today. If we end up with a bunch of questions, we'll get Reuben back again. They're also a fellow B Corp, which I think is really terrific, especially in a business, with the challenges of making such a range of product in all sorts of places and trying to get that right. I think you've heard today about the effort required to do business well and do it with some depth. I think that's encouraging for all of us. Reuben, I really want to thank you for joining us today on the Be Better Off show. Have a great day.
Great. Thank you. My pleasure, Brent. All the best.
Thanks for listening to the Be Better Off show. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to rate and review on Apple Podcasts.
Have a great day.